It's funny how a single scent can transport you back in time. For me, it was always the smell of old paper and leather. It wasn't a dusty, forgotten smell. No, it was the scent of stories waiting to be told, of bindings crafted with love and purpose. This was the smell of my life's work, my dream, my little sanctuary in a world that often felt too loud, a bespoke journal and stationery shop I called the Gilded Page. From the very beginning, it was more than just a business. It was a haven I built from scratch, with a small inheritance and a heart full of hope. I remembered the early days, sanding the wooden shelves myself until my fingers were raw, spending nights poring over paper samples, feeling the textures, imagining the ink that would soon grace their surfaces. Each journal was unique, hand-bound by me, with covers ranging from soft, supple leather to beautifully intricate fabrics I found in small, forgotten shops. People didn't just buy a notebook. They bought a companion for their thoughts, a keeper of their secrets, a vessel for their dreams. My life was woven into the very fabric of that shop. The quiet mornings, the gentle bell that announced a new visitor, the shared smiles with customers who became friends. They would tell me what they were going to write in their new journals. Poems, a family history, a business plan, a simple diary. I was the guardian of their beginnings, and it filled me with a quiet, profound joy. This joy, however, often felt like a secret I had to keep, especially at home. I was married to Richard. To the outside world, Richard was the epitome of success. A senior executive at a large financial firm, he was charming, impeccably dressed, and moved through life with an air of unshakable confidence. He provided a life of comfort, a beautiful home, and a calendar full of glamorous social events. In the eyes of many, I was the lucky one, the woman who had it all. But behind the closed doors of our elegant house, my world often felt small, my accomplishments insignificant. Richard saw the Gilded Page not as a testament to my passion and hard work, but as a cute little hobby. He'd say it with a patronizing smile, ruffling my hair as if I were a child. "It's good that you have something to keep you busy," he'd comment, his tone implying that my something was trivial compared to his world of high-stakes mergers and multi-million-dollar deals. I tried to share my successes with him. The day a renowned author bought a journal to start her new novel, or when a local magazine wrote a small feature on the shop. He would listen with half an ear, his eyes already drifting back to his phone, before offering a lukewarm, "That's nice, honey." His praise was a hollow echo in our large, quiet home. It was as if my dream, so vibrant and real to me, was invisible to him, a faint watercolor painting in his world of bold, stark oil canvases. The conflict wasn't in loud arguments or dramatic fights. It was in the thousand tiny cuts, the subtle dismissals, the jokes made at my expense that weren't really jokes at all. When his friends came over for dinner, he would introduce me with a wave of his hand. "This is my wife, Elena. She makes pretty little books." The words stung, reducing my craft, my soul's work, to a quaint pastime. I would force a smile, feeling my world shrink under his casual disdain. I knew he wasn't a monster. In his own way, he probably thought he was being supportive, providing a safety net that allowed me to play with my little shop. He didn't understand that the Gilded Page wasn't a distraction. It was my anchor. It wasn't a hobby. It was my identity. He measured worth in dollar signs and stock market trends, while I measured it in the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly stitched binding and the grateful smile of a customer. The tension grew, a silent, creeping vine around our marriage. I started to retreat further into my world, spending longer hours at the shop. The scent of paper and leather became my comfort, the quiet hum of the street outside my soundtrack. It was there I felt seen, valued. The contrast was stark. At the shop, I was Elena, the creator, the entrepreneur. At home, I was just Richard's wife, the woman with the charming little hobby. This slow erosion of my spirit culminated in the lead-up to his company's annual gala. It was the most important event of the year for him. A night of networking, of being seen with the right people, of climbing another rung on the corporate ladder. For me, it was an obligation, a performance. A few weeks before the event, something incredible happened. A major corporation, a giant in the creative software industry, had approached me. They were launching a new line of premium digital tools and wanted to partner with an artisan brand for a physical, limited edition product. They wanted the Gilded Page. The initial meetings were a whirlwind of excitement and nervous energy. They talked about a massive acquisition, a sum of money that made my head spin, but more importantly, they spoke of my work with a reverence and understanding that Richard had never shown. They saw the value, the artistry, the brand I had so carefully built. They didn't want to change it. They wanted to elevate it. I tried to tell Richard about it one evening. He was distracted, flipping through the guest list for the gala. "Richard, something amazing is happening with the shop," I began, my voice trembling slightly with the weight of it all. "That's great, sweetie," he said, not looking up. "Did you remember to get my suit from the dry cleaners?" I persisted. "No, you don't understand. A huge company they want to acquire it." He finally looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes. For a moment, I thought it was pride. I was wrong. It was amusement. A slow smile spread across his face. "Acquire it? Your little notebook shop? Honey, what would a real company want with that? Did you get the numbers right?" He chuckled, a soft, dismissive sound that echoed louder than a shout. "Don't get your hopes up. It's probably some small-time marketing thing." That chuckle was the final cut. It severed something deep inside me. In that moment, the silent vine of tension that had been growing around our marriage tightened, and I knew something had to break. The gala was just a few days away, and I had a decision to make. The night of the gala arrived, draped in velvet and shimmering with artificial stars. The ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns, a carefully orchestrated performance of wealth and power. From the moment we stepped out of the car, I felt like an accessory on Richard's arm, my sequined dress a costume for a role I no longer wanted to play. He navigated the room with the predatory grace of a shark, shaking hands, clapping backs, his laughter booming just a little too loudly. I was a silent shadow by his side, my smile a fragile mask. He would introduce me, and the script was always the same. "This is my wife, Elena." Then he'd lean in conspiratorially, a playful glint in his eye. "She runs the most charming little shop, sells notebooks. Very quaint." The word quaint was delivered with a subtle wink, as if we were all in on the same joke, the joke of my life's work. Each time I felt a piece of myself chip away. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of self-importance. I clutched a glass of champagne I had no intention of drinking, the bubbles rising and dying, much like my hope for the evening. My own secret, the impending acquisition, felt like a warm, glowing ember cupped in my hands. It was the only thing that kept the chill of the room at bay. The final call with the legal team was scheduled for Monday. They were ready. The only question left was whether I was. The moment that would change everything happened near the grand, ice-sculpted centerpiece of the room. Richard had finally managed to corner his boss, Mr. Harrison, a man with a reputation for being shrewd but fair. Mr. Harrison was older, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He was flanked by a few other senior partners, the inner circle of Richard's universe. "Elena, you look lovely tonight," Mr. Harrison said, his voice a calm island in the noisy sea of the gala. He had a surprisingly gentle demeanor for a man in his position. I managed a genuine smile. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. It's quite an event." "Richard tells me you're an entrepreneur," one of the partners chimed in, looking at me with mild curiosity. "What kind of business is it?" Before I could form a reply, before I could talk about the craft, the community, the soul of the Gilded Page, Richard jumped in. He draped a heavy arm around my shoulders, pulling me in. He'd had one too many glasses of scotch, and his usual patronizing charm had curdled into outright arrogance. "Oh, you have to hear this," he began, a wide performative grin on his face. He looked at the group, not at me. "Elena has a little arts and crafts project. She makes these adorable little diaries, with glitter and ribbon." He made a delicate, mincing gesture with his fingers, mimicking someone sewing. "It's where ladies go to write down their feelings." A few of the men chuckled politely. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. The ember of my secret suddenly felt fragile, in danger of being extinguished by the force of his ridicule. He wasn't done. He was playing to his audience, feeding off their attention. I'm always telling her, "Honey, you've got to think bigger." But she loves her little hobby. It keeps her busy while I'm out here, in the real world, slaying dragons. He roared with laughter, and this time, the other men joined in, their laughter echoing in my ears, sharp and cruel like shattering glass. He looked down at me then, his eyes shining with a toxic mix of alcohol and ego. "Isn't that right, sweetie? Tell them about your pretty little books." The world went silent. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all faded into a dull, distant roar. All I could see was his smug, smiling face, waiting for me to play my part, to be the dutiful wife who smiled demurely and validated his joke. All I could feel were the eyes of these powerful men on me, not with curiosity anymore, but with a kind of pitying amusement. I was not a person in that moment. I was a punchline. My blood ran cold. The hurt was immense, a physical blow to my chest. But underneath it, something else stirred. It was a feeling I hadn't felt in a very long time. A hot, clarifying rage. The 1,000 tiny cuts he had inflicted over the years had finally coalesced into a single, deep wound. And in that wound, a strange strength was born. I slowly lifted my chin and looked directly at him. My own smile, which had been plastered on my face all night, fell away. My expression was calm, my eyes clear. The frantic bird in my chest stopped fluttering and grew still. I saw our entire marriage in that single, terrible moment. The casual dismissals, the hollow praise, the profound, unbridgeable gap between his world and mine. He hadn't just mocked my business, he had mocked my soul. And I realized, with a certainty that was as terrifying as it was liberating, that I was done. Done with the shrinking, done with the smiling, done with being the punchline. I took a small step back, and his heavy arm fell from my shoulders. The absence of its weight was a revelation. I could stand on my own. I gave him a look that I'm sure he had never seen before. Not of anger, not of hurt, but of finality. A quiet resolve settled over me. The decision was made. The Gala, his stage, would become mine. The acquisition wouldn't just be a business deal. It would be a declaration of independence. Mr. Harrison's eyes were still on me. The laughter had died on his lips, and his sharp gaze was now filled with an unreadable expression. Perhaps it was pity, or perhaps it was something closer to understanding. It didn't matter. The only person I needed to answer to now was myself. A profound calm washed over me, the kind that follows a storm. The muffled sounds of the gala returned, but they were distant, insignificant. In the center of my own quiet universe, there was only a single point of focus: the path forward. I held Richard's gaze for a second longer, letting him see the stranger I had become in that instant. Then I turned my attention to his boss. "Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice even and clear, devoid of the tremor I had felt all evening. "Forgive my husband's poor choice of words. He's right about one thing, though. My business is, at its heart, about feelings. The feeling of purpose, of creativity, of giving a voice to one's own story." I then gave the group a polite, small smile. "If you'll excuse me for a moment." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away, not back to the lonely table where my wrap was waiting, but towards the grand terrace doors. I moved with a purpose I hadn't felt in years, my back straight, my head held high. I could feel their eyes on me, particularly Richard's, his confusion a palpable force behind me. He likely expected me to flee to the restroom in tears. He was wrong. I stepped out onto the cool, quiet terrace, the city lights sprawling before me like a carpet of fallen stars. I took one deep, clean breath and pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady as I found the number I needed. "Elena?" A warm, professional voice answered on the first ring. It was Sarah, the lead negotiator from the software giant, a woman who had treated my work with nothing but respect from our very first conversation. "Sarah, hi," I said softly. "I apologize for the late hour." "Not at all. Is everything all right?" she asked, a note of concern in her voice. "Everything is perfect," I replied, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. "I'm calling because I've made my decision. I'm ready to sign." I could hear her exhale, a sound of relief and excitement. "Elena, that's fantastic news. Our CEO, Mr. Vance, happens to be in town. He was hoping to meet you in person. He's actually at a restaurant just a few blocks from the Ritz-Carlton, where I believe your gala is being held." The pieces clicked into place with a beautiful, satisfying certainty. It was kismet. "He is," I confirmed. "Sarah, would you do me a favor? Could you ask Mr. Vance if he'd be willing to step away from his dinner for just 10 minutes? I believe we have an opportunity to finalize this in a rather memorable way." There was a brief pause, and I could hear the muffled sound of Sarah speaking to someone else. She came back on the line, her voice buzzing with energy. "He's intrigued, and he loves a bold move. He's on his way. He'll meet you on the terrace in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. It was all the time I needed. I walked back into the ballroom, my steps measured and deliberate. I found the group still standing by the ice sculpture, though their conversation had faltered. Richard looked relieved to see me, as if my brief absence had absolved him of his cruelty. He started to walk towards me, his hand outstretched. "Elena, honey, I held up a hand, a simple, non-negotiable gesture that stopped him in his tracks. I looked past him, directly at his boss. Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice projecting just enough to hold the attention of the small group. A business matter has unexpectedly come up that requires my immediate attention. I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but I need to conclude it here. Richard stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. A business matter? Elena, what are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous. Just then, the terrace doors opened again. A distinguished man in a beautifully tailored suit, not a tuxedo, stepped through. He had an air of quiet authority and a warm, intelligent face. He scanned the room for a moment before his eyes landed on me. He smiled and walked over. Mrs. Sterling? He asked, his voice calm and respectful. Mr. Vance, I replied, extending my hand. Thank you so much for coming on such short notice. He shook my hand warmly. The pleasure is all mine. Sarah has told me so much about your vision. We at Omni Creative believe that the Gilded Page is not just a company, but a philosophy, one we are deeply honored to become a part of. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Richard's face. The color had drained from it. He was looking at Mr. Vance, then at me, the cogs in his brain turning furiously, unable to compute the scene unfolding before him. Mr. Harrison and the other partners were watching with rapt attention, their expressions shifting from curiosity to sheer astonishment. Omni Creative? Mr. Harrison murmured, the name instantly recognized. They were titans of the industry. Mr. Vance's assistant appeared discreetly by his side, holding a sleek leather portfolio. Mr. Vance took it, opened it, and pulled out a single elegant document and a pen. He handed them to me. As we discussed, the final agreement for the acquisition of the Gilded Page. All terms as we agreed. Your role as Chief Creative Officer of the new artisanal division, your team protected, and your vision fully funded. I took the document. My hands were no longer trembling. They were rock solid. I used the hard surface of the portfolio as a makeshift table. The murmurs around us had died completely. The only sound was the distant music of the Gala, a soundtrack to my liberation. I looked at the signature line. Then I looked up, my eyes sweeping over the faces of the partners, lingering for a beat on Mr. Harrison, and finally landing on my husband. His face was a mask of horror. The bravado, the arrogance, the smug confidence, it had all evaporated, replaced by a pale, sickly understanding. He saw the numbers on the front page of the contract, his eyes widening in disbelief. He saw the name Omni Creative, a company his own firm had been trying to land as a client for years. He saw his boss, Mr. Harrison, looking at him with an expression of profound disappointment and dawning fury. He had tried to make me small, and in front of everyone who mattered to him, he was witnessing just how big my world truly was. With a steady hand, I signed my name. Elena Sterling. Not Richard's wife. Not the woman with the cute little hobby, but the founder and creator of a brand that was now worth more than he could have possibly imagined. I handed the signed document and the pen back to Mr. Vance. Welcome to the team, Elena, he said with a brilliant smile. It's an honor, I replied. And for the first time that night, I meant it. Mr. Vance, a man of impeccable discretion, simply nodded, shook my hand one final time, and departed as quietly as he had arrived. The silence he left in his wake was more profound than any noise. The small group of powerful men remained frozen, looking at the empty space where the CEO of Omni Creative had just stood. I turned my gaze back to the group. Mr. Harrison was looking at Richard, but not with anger. It was something far worse. A cold, clinical assessment, as if seeing a fatal flaw in a piece of machinery he had once trusted. The other partners avoided looking at Richard altogether, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and awe directed at me. And Richard? He looked utterly broken. The architect of my humiliation was now the sole occupant of the wreckage he had created. He opened his mouth, then closed it. No words came out. What could he possibly say? He hadn't just misjudged my little hobby. He had fundamentally misjudged me. He had failed to see the person standing right next to him for years, and that failure had just cost him dearly in the arena he valued most, the one of professional perception and power. I felt no triumph in his devastation. I didn't feel anger anymore or even satisfaction. I just felt free. The heavy cloak of his expectations, his dismissiveness, his world, it had all just fallen away. I gave a final polite nod to Mr. Harrison. It was a pleasure seeing you again, I said calmly. Then, without a single glance back at my husband, I turned and walked away. I walked through the opulent ballroom, past the sea of oblivious faces, my head held high. I didn't rush. Every step was deliberate, carrying me away from a life that no longer fit and towards one that was entirely my own. I left my wrap on the chair, my champagne glass on the table, and Richard standing amidst the ruins of his own making. I walked out of the Grand Hotel and into the cool, clear night, not as Richard Sterling's wife, but as Elena Sterling, the woman who had just taken back her own story. There was no dramatic confrontation when I got home. There was no shouting, no throwing of plates. The bond between us had not been broken by a single explosive event, but had withered and died from 1,000 moments of neglect. The gala was merely the confirmation of its death. I packed a bag in silence, the quiet hum of the house a testament to the emptiness that had lived there all along. He arrived an hour later, his face pale and drawn. He didn't ask me to stay. He just watched as I walked to the door, a ghost in the home he had built. "Elena," he finally said, his voice raspy. I didn't know." "That's just it, Richard," I replied, my hand on the doorknob. "You never cared to know." And with that, I left. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers and logistics, but also of incredible, exhilarating creation. Stepping into my new role at OmniCreative was like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a stuffy room for a decade. I was surrounded by people who respected my vision, who listened to my ideas, who saw my passion not as a quaint hobby, but as a powerful asset. My little team from the Gilded Page came with me, and together we were given the resources to dream bigger than ever before. The scent of old paper and leather was now mingled with the exciting energy of innovation and global reach. Today, it's been a year since that night. Our new line, The Gilded Page by OmniCreative, has been a phenomenal success. I travel, I lead, I create. I found a new home, a small sunlit apartment that is entirely my own, filled with books and plants and the beautiful, happy chaos of my own life. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm sketching a new design, I think about that gala. I don't remember the sting of the humiliation anymore. I remember the moment of clarity, the moment I realized that my worth was never up for his approval. I had been waiting for him to see my value, when the only person who needed to see it was me. His mockery was not a reflection of my insignificance, but of his own insecurity. He needed to make me small so he could feel big. And that is a lesson that life teaches us, sometimes in the most painful of ways. How many of us have allowed someone else's opinion to become the measure of our own worth? How many of us have dimmed our own light so as not to outshine the person standing next to us? We wait for permission to be proud of ourselves, for validation that our dreams are important, for applause from an audience that may never truly understand our song. My story is not about revenge. It is about reclamation. It is about the quiet, unshakable power that is born when you finally decide to stop apologizing for who you are. The signature on that contract was not an act of defiance against my husband. It was an act of allegiance to myself. So if you are out there, feeling unseen, feeling that your passion is just a little hobby, or that your voice is too quiet to be heard above the noise, I hope you hear this. Your story is yours to write. Your worth is not a topic for debate. It is a fact. Do not wait for someone else to hand you the pen. Pick it up and write a chapter so bold and so true that the entire world has no choice but to read it. Find your own terrace, take a deep breath, and make the call. Sign your own name. Your liberation is waiting.